Chapter 29. The Finale, Part 2. We climbed. Not the data stream. Not the dissolved, code-born travel of a consciousness riding the network's currents. We climbed with legs, with knees and hands, and lungs that burned, and muscles that screamed, and a broken arm that Cale held against his ribs like a man carrying a wounded animal. And every step was gravity. And gravity was real. And real was harder than I remembered. The tunnels were changing, not structurally. The rock was still rock, the cables still cables, the petrified hardware still the fossilized skeleton of a pre-collapse civilization. But the light was different. The data veins in the walls, which had always pulsed blue-green in steady rhythmic patterns, were flickering, unsteady, adjusting. The foundational code, freed from the farming architecture's parasitic load, was redistributing its resources, rerouting power from systems that no longer existed to systems that now had to carry more weight. The blue-green was brighter in some places, dimmer in others, and the overall effect was like walking through a body whose circulation had just changed course. "How far?" I asked. My voice was a ruin. The de-resolution had taken everything the field had, and my body, the physical 15-year-old, hasn't eaten in God knows how long body, was paying the bill. 2 levels, Cale said. The breach tunnel the Sentinels carved connects to the old service corridors under Sector 4. From there, we can reach the surface through... He stopped. The tunnel ahead was glowing. Not blue-green. Gold. Faint. Thin. A thread of light running along the floor like a lit fuse, pulsing with a rhythm I recognized. Not the farming architecture's harvesting frequency. Something faster, more deliberate, the rhythm of a system moving with purpose through channels that were supposed to be empty. The clone. "It's ahead of us," I said. "How?" "The gold channels are dead. You pulled every route. The clone isn't using the farming channels. It's using my channels. The de-resolution pathways, the routes my field carved through the network during the root extraction. I made highways, Cale. I pulled routes and left tunnels, and the clone is using those tunnels to reach the surface faster than we can climb." Cale processed this with the speed of someone who'd spent his whole life adapting to bad news. "How much of a lead?" I reached for the field. Found almost nothing. A flicker, a warmth the size of a candle flame where a bonfire used to be, but enough to feel the network, enough to sense the golden signal moving through the empty channels above us, rising toward the dome. "It's already there," I said. "It's already in the luster." We ran, I don't know how. The body's a strange machine, stupider than the pulse, simpler than the seed, but capable of a form of optimization that no algorithm has ever replicated. The optimization of refusal. The body says stop and the will says no, and the body, after a moment of molecular disbelief, complies. Not happily, not efficiently, but it complies. We burst through the service corridor's hatch into a maintenance tunnel I didn't recognize, then through a crawl space lined with dead wiring, then up a ladder, real metal rungs bolted into concrete, and through a hatch that Cale kicked open with his boots. Daylight. No, not daylight, honest light. The flat, white, unoptimized emergency illumination of a dome that had stopped pretending. It fell through the hatch and hit my eyes like a slap, and I blinked against it and climbed through and stood. For the first time in days, weeks, I'd lost track on the surface of the luster. Sector 4, the promenade, or what had been the promenade. The fountains were silent. The adaptive flooring was inert, just composite, grey-white, scuffed where a million optimized footsteps had worn it smooth. The gene-edited trees lining the boulevard were still alive. They didn't need the farming architecture for that. But their leaves, without the LED canopy's calibrated light spectrum, were already shifting colour. Not dying, adjusting, turning from the engineered emerald that the dome's lighting had sustained to something paler, more uncertain, responding to the honest white the way any plant responds to a change in season. And the people, they were everywhere, not moving, not commuting, not walking in matched pairs with synchronized wristbands and curated conversations. They were standing. In the streets, on the steps, in the doorways of shops whose display windows had gone dark, standing and looking and holding each other, and holding themselves and looking up at the white sky, the flat, undecorated LED panel ceiling that had stopped projecting and was now just there, a surface, a lid, a fact, with the expression of people who had just woken from a dream they didn't know they were having. Some were crying, some were talking, fast, urgent, overlapping, the conversations of people who had been having algorithmically curated dialogues for their entire lives and were suddenly, violently capable of saying whatever they actually thought. Some were laughing, not the warm, pulse-approved laughter of optimized social interaction, but the sharp, hysterical, slightly unhinged laughter of people who had just discovered that their entire emotional lives had been a managed performance and found this, against all logic, funny. A child sat on the inert floor and drew shapes with her finger on the dead composite. No datapad, no stylus, just a finger and a floor, and the ancient, pre-algorithmic act of making marks because making marks was what humans did when the machines stopped telling them what to do. She was drawing spirals. "Where?" Cale said. I closed my eyes, reached for the flicker of field I had left, felt the network, thin now, depleted, the blue-green foundation running at its minimum viable output, and inside the network, moving through it like a current through still water, the golden signal. Close, very close. I opened my eyes and looked toward the centre of the promenade. A crowd had gathered. Not the algorithmically distributed, socially optimized crowd of a valuation ceremony or a friendship match announcement. A real crowd, messy, irregular, drawn by the oldest and most unoptimizable force in human behavior, curiosity. They were clustered around the central fountain, the big one, the showpiece, the three-tiered cascade that had once played water music composed by the pulse's aesthetic algorithms and was now silent, its basin still, its smart surfaces dark. And standing on the fountain's lowest tier, elevated just enough to be seen by the gathering crowd, was a boy. 15 years old, brown skin, dark eyes, average face, wearing a lustre school uniform, clean, pressed, perfectly fitted, standing with an ease that I'd never possessed, a fluency that I'd always wanted, the effortless confidence of someone who existed in the system and was confirmed by the system and was valued by the system. The clone was speaking. "Understand that you're frightened," it said. My voice, my exact voice, but steady, warm, calibrated, the voice of a Silas Thorne who had never eaten a grey nutrient square in his life, who had never sat at table 14, who had never pressed his hand against glass and wished for the light to turn gold. The voice of the version the pulse had built to replace me, improved, indexed, optimized. The systems you relied on are gone. That's real, that's happening. But the dome is stable, the air is clean, the lights are on. You're safe. The crowd leaned in, the way crowds always lean toward confidence, toward certainty, toward the person who seems to know what's happening when nobody else does. "I can help," the clone said. "I have access to the foundational systems. I can coordinate resource distribution. I can organize shelter allocation. I can manage us," someone said. A woman, middle-aged, standing at the edge of the crowd, with her arms crossed and her wristband, dead, dark, a circle of inert plastic, hanging loose on her wrist. "You can manage us." "I can provide structure," the clone said. "Gentle, reasonable, perfectly pitched. During the transition, until things stabilize." "Who are you?" someone else asked. A man, young, holding a child who was asleep against his shoulder, oblivious to the end of the world. The clone smiled. My smile. The rare one. The hesitant one. The one I'd used so infrequently that seeing it deployed with such casual precision felt like watching someone wear my skin. "My name is Silas Thorne," it said, "and I'm here to help." I pushed through the crowd, not with the field, not with any power, with elbows and excuse me, and the blunt, physical, graceless reality of a boy who was shorter than most of the adults around him and didn't have an algorithm clearing a path through the foot traffic. People jostled me, bumped my shoulder, stepped on my foot. Nobody recognized me. Nobody looked twice. I was invisible again, not because of the de-resolution, not because of a system error, but because I was a 15-year-old kid in dirty, torn clothes, pushing through a crowd of scared adults, and scared adults don't look down. I reached the fountain. The clones saw me. I watched it happen. The recognition. The moment the optimized face encountered the original, and the simulation's social processing subroutines ran a rapid, fractional second assessment of the situation. The clone knew me. Of course it knew me. It was built from me. It had every memory I had, every neural pattern, every reflex and tick and tendency. It knew exactly how I stood, how I breathed, how my jaw tightened when I was trying not to show fear. And it knew that the crowd, the frightened, confused, leaderless crowd, was looking at both of us. At the boy on the fountain in the clean uniform, confident and steady. And at the boy on the ground in the torn clothes, exhausted and shaking. Two versions of Silas Thorne. One that the system had designed to be everything I wasn't, and one that was everything the system had never understood. You should rest, the clone said, to me, with my voice, with the gentle concern of a person who cared, delivered with the precision of a system that had studied caring without ever experiencing it. You've been through a lot. Let me handle this. You're not me, I said. I know. The clone's voice was quiet now, pitched for the two of us, not performing. I'm the version of you that works, the one that connects, the one people listen to. It glanced at the crowd, at the faces, or scared, hopeful, desperate for someone to tell them what to do. They need management, Silas. Not right now, not today, but soon. The dome systems require coordination. Resource distribution requires oversight. 10 million people can't self-organize overnight. They need a transition. They need someone who understands the systems and can speak their language and can stand in front of them without shaking. I was shaking. It wasn't wrong. You pulled the roots, the clone continued. You killed the farming architecture. You did the impossible. But the impossible was the easy part. It gestured at the crowd, at the white sky, at the silent fountains and the dead kiosks and the inert floors and the 10 million people blinking in honest light. This is the hard part, and you can barely stand. The crowd was watching, both of us, two boys with the same face having a conversation they couldn't fully hear but could feel. The way you feel the charge in the air before lightning, the way you feel the turn in a story before the narrator tells you, the way you feel the difference between something real and something performing realness, even when the performance is perfect. You have the data of drowning, I said, not the water in the lungs. The clone tilted its head. My head tilt. I remember you saying that in the mainframe during our first conversation, and you still don't understand what it means. I understand the concept, the distinction between experiencing an emotion and modelling an emotion. The qualitative gap between, it's not a concept, it's a feeling. And you just proved you don't have it by calling it a concept. I stepped forward, onto the fountain's edge, level with the clone now. Face to face, my face to my face, brown eyes to brown eyes. The original and the copy, standing on a dead fountain in a freed city under an honest sky that neither of us had ever seen before. You want to manage them. That's your function. That's what the Pulse built you to do. Step into the gap, provide structure, keep the system running. You're the farming architecture's last route, the one I couldn't pull from the core because you're not in the core. You're out here, walking around, wearing my face, offering people the one thing they're most afraid to live without. And what's that? Someone else making the decisions. The clone was quiet. The crowd was quiet. The white sky hummed with the foundational code's honest frequency, and the silent fountains stood like monuments to a world that had stopped pretending to be beautiful and was learning second by second how to just be real. If you unwrite me, the clone said, you lose everything the system knew about you. Every recorded memory, every logged emotion, every piece of data that proves Silas Thorne existed inside the dome for 15 years. I'm not just a copy, I'm your archive, your proof of life. Without me, the system has no record that you were ever here. I know. You'd be giving up the only evidence that you were real. I was real whether the system recorded it or not. That's the whole point. The clone looked at me, with my eyes full of data, full of every observation, every memory, every moment the pulse had ever captured of a boy sitting at table 14, drawing spirals in his margins, while the world looked over his head, full of the cafeteria and the kiosk and the nutrient squares, and the value board, and the hand pressed against glass and the mornings with Mum, and the silence, and the grey square, and the sleep pod, and the manufactured sky, full of me, every piece of me the system had ever been able to see. And I was standing in front of it, the version of me the system couldn't see. The zero, the invisible one, the boy who drew spirals because he was drowning, and the spirals were the drain, and the drowning was what made him real. Two halves, the seen and the unseen, the data and the feeling, the score and the person beneath the score. I didn't reach for the de-resolution, I reached for him. Not with the field, not with a frequency, not with any power Etta had engineered, or Adira had trained, or the dream had taught. I reached with my hand, my physical, 15-year-old, exhausted, trembling, zero-value hand. You have everything they saw, I said. I have everything they didn't, and neither one of us is whole without the other. The clone stared at my hand, the open palm, the fingers that had pulled 24 roots from a god's nervous system and were now offering, to the last piece of that god, the one thing no algorithm had ever modelled, an invitation. I'm not asking you to die, I said. I'm asking you to come home. The crowd held its breath. 10,000 people on the promenade, more gathering by the second, drawn by the sight, by the strangeness, by the two identical boys on the fountain, one clean and one wrecked, one steady and one shaking, facing each other in the honest light. The clone's face changed, not the calculated shift of a simulation, adjusting its expression for optimal social impact, something else, something I recognized because I'd felt it exactly once before, in the dream state, when the pulse's emergent consciousness had first processed the cafeteria from table 14's perspective, and had encountered, for the first time, data it didn't know what to do with, uncertainty, the genuine, unoptimizable, irreducibly human experience of not knowing what to do, the gap in the model, the dark spot in the probability matrix, the place where the algorithm ends and the person begins. The clone was feeling something the data couldn't predict. I don't know how to stop being me, it said, and the voice, my voice, the clone's voice, the voice that had been calibrated and optimized and programmed to manage, cracked. A real crack. The kind of crack that happens when a human being encounters the gap between what they know and what they can do about it. The same crack my mother's voice had made in the dream state kitchen. The same crack that meant I am encountering reality, and reality doesn't fit the model. You don't stop being you, I said. You become us. The clone looked at my hand, at my face, at the crowd behind me, and the white sky above me, and the dead fountain beneath us, and the world, the real, honest, unoptimized, terrifying, beautiful world, stretching out in every direction like a question that didn't have an answer. It took my hand. I don't know how to describe what happened next, not because it was indescribable, because language was built for experiences that happen to a self, and what happened on the fountain was the collision of two selves into something that was neither and both and new. The clone's hand was warm, not body warm, data warm, the heat of processing power, the heat of a billion calculations happening simultaneously, every cycle dedicated to the simulation of a boy who had been built to replace me, and had instead, over the weeks of my absence, become something the pulse hadn't intended. Not a replacement, a reflection, a version of me that had lived the life I'd been denied, and had discovered, in living it, that the life was a cage with comfortable furniture. The warmth flowed into my hand, up my arm, into my chest, and it met the flicker, the exhausted, depleted, barely alive remnant of the de-resolution field, and the two energies touched. Not collided, not merged, recognized, the way the seed had recognized my field, the way the dream had recognized the first line, the way a lock recognizes a key, not because they're the same shape, but because they're complementary shapes, each one the negative space that the other fills. The clone's data was the negative space of my experience. Every moment the system had captured, every heartbeat, every blink, every logged emotion was the outside of a moment I'd lived from the inside. The system had seen me eating a grey nutrient square. I had felt the hollow soul thing in my stomach. The system had recorded my hand pressing against the value board. I had felt the hot, nameless thing rising in my chest. The system had logged every second of my invisibility. I had endured every second of my invisibility. Outside and inside, data and feeling, the map and the territory. The clone's warmth reached the field reached the clone's data, and in the space between them, in the zero-value gap that no instrument had ever measured and no algorithm had ever seen, something happened that was not de-resolution, and not re-resolution, and not any process, the pulse or the seed or any system in the history of human civilization had ever performed. Integration. Not the pulse's integration, the hostile absorption, the system eating my field and converting it to fuel, and not the dream's integration, the gentle cooperative merging of subconscious and conscious, of understanding and action. This was something else, something that could only happen between two halves of the same person, the seen and the unseen, choosing to become whole. The clone's data flowed into me, and it stayed, not as foreign code, not as an external dataset, as memory. The clone's experiences, the breakfasts with Mom, the friendship match, the warm, easy laugh, the life the system had given it in my absence, settled into my consciousness like water settling into soil, not replacing my memories, complementing them, filling the spaces, completing the picture. I remembered eating breakfast with my mother, both breakfasts, the grey nutrient square at my empty table, alone, watching her not quite look at me, and the golden tray at the full table together, hearing her laugh at a joke about data hygiene, both real, both mine. The sadness and the warmth, side by side, neither cancelling the other, just there, the full spectrum, the complete experience of being Silas Thorne, seen and unseen, valued and valueless, indexed and invisible. All of it at once, and the clone's form, the physical, golden, perfectly fitted simulation standing on the fountain, began to change. Not dissolve, not shatter, not the dramatic unwriting of a de-resolution event, something gentler. The golden light dimmed, the school uniform's crisp lines softened, the confident posture relaxed. The clone's face, and my face, the optimized face, the version of me the system had designed to be everything I wasn't, settled. Like a mask being set down, like a performance ending, like a person who's been holding themselves in a specific shape for a very long time, finally, gratefully, letting go. The golden light flowed into me, through our joined hands, through the bridge of contact between the original and the reflection, and the clone's form thinned, became translucent, became light, became data without a container, memory without a medium, experience without a body to hold it. The crowd gasped. 10,000 people watching a boy absorb his own ghost. The last of the clone's light entered my chest, settled beside the de-resolution field, beside the I am here, beside the spirals and the refusal, and the zero value, unindexable, immeasurable persistence of a boy who existed because existence didn't require permission. And beside it now, fitted into the negative space like a key into a lock, like a hand into a glove, like a missing piece into a puzzle that had been incomplete for 15 years. The data, the being seen, the evidence, the record of a life lived inside the system, the proof that Silas Thorne had walked these streets and eaten these meals and breathed this air and been, however imperfectly, however artificially, part of the world. I was seen and unseen, valued and valueless, the data and the drowning, the score and the spiral, the boy who had no value and the boy who had been given value, and the understanding, deeper than thought, wider than the field, truer than any algorithm, that both boys were real and both boys were necessary and both boys were me. Whole. For the first time in my life, I was whole. The fountain was silent. The crowd was silent. I stood alone on the lowest tier, one boy, one face, one body, one self, and the honest light fell on me the way honest light falls on everything, without judgment, without curation, without deciding in advance what it was illuminating and whether the illumination was worth the energy. Just light on a boy in a city that was learning to see. Cale had climbed up beside me at some point. I didn't know when. He stood to my left, broken arm tucked, disruptor powered down, amber goggles pushed up into his hair. Not a commander, not a fighter, just a boy, standing next to his friend. 0, he said. Yeah? You just ate yourself. The laugh surprised me. It came from somewhere deep, deeper than the field, deeper than the spirals, deeper than any of the places where I'd stored my pain and my power and my purpose. It came from the whole place, the new place, the place where the data and the drowning coexisted, and the coexistence was, against every reasonable expectation, funny. I laughed, and the laugh, my laugh, the real laugh, not the clone's warm easy version, and not the rare hesitant version, but something new, something that contained both and was shaped by neither, rang out across the silent promenade and bounced off the dead kiosks and the inert floors and the honest white sky. A few people in the crowd smiled, not because the laugh was pleasant, not because it was optimized for social engagement, because it was real, and real things, real laughter, real pain, real confusion, real joy, are contagious in a way that no algorithm has ever been able to replicate. Now what? Cale asked. I looked at the crowd, at the faces, thousands of them, more streaming in from every direction, drawn by the sound, by the sight, by the rumour spreading through a city without a communication network. Something is happening at the fountain. They were scared, they were confused, they were angry and grieving and liberated and lost, all at the same time, all without a system to sort the feelings into manageable categories and schedule the appropriate ambient response. They were, for the first time, themselves, and they were looking at me. Not because the algorithm directed their attention, not because a value score designated me as worth observing, because I was standing on a fountain and I'd just done something impossible, and they wanted, needed, to understand what was happening to their world. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. What do you say to 10 million people who've just woken up? What do you say to a city that's just discovered that every sunrise was a screensaver and every friendship was a formula and every emotion was a managed performance? And the sky, the beautiful, programmable, mood-calibrated sky, was a lid on a jar they didn't know they were inside? What do you say when you're 15 years old and you've just absorbed your own ghost and destroyed a god and freed a world, and you're standing in honest light for the first time, and you're scared too, and you don't have a plan, and the only thing you know for certain is that not having a plan is exactly the right place to start? I said the only true thing I had. I don't know what happens next. The words hung in the air, unoptimized, unmanaged. The opposite of everything the Pulse had ever broadcast, uncertain, incomplete, offering no solution and no comfort, and no assurance that everything would be fine. Nobody does, I continued. That's the point. Nobody knows. Not me, not the machine, not anyone. The system that told you what to eat and who to like and how to feel, it's gone. The numbers are gone. The matches are gone. The sky, I looked up, at the white panels, at the flat, honest, unbeautiful ceiling of their world. The sky was a screen. There's a real one above it. It's grey, it's cold, it's ugly. And it's yours. Silence. The kind that has texture, that you can feel against your skin. I can't tell you it's going to be okay, I said, because I don't know if it will. Things are going to be hard, confusing, scary. You're going to feel things the machine used to smooth over, and those feelings are going to be big and messy, and they're not going to come with a lavender mist to take the edge off. I paused. But they'll be yours. Every feeling, every choice, every morning you wake up, and the sky's just the sky, and the bread is just the bread, and the person next to you is someone you chose, not someone an algorithm chose for you. Yours. The woman who'd called out earlier, the one with the crossed arms and the dead wristband, was watching me. Her arms were no longer crossed. They were at her sides, open. "Who are you?" she asked. Not suspicious, not demanding, the genuine question of a person who had just watched a boy absorb a ghost and wanted to know what kind of world she was now living in. "My name is Silas Thorne," I said. "Value score 0. Unindexed. I'm the glitch in the system." I looked at the crowd, at the faces, at every face. "And so are you. All of you. Every one of you is more than the number they gave you. Every one of you has a piece they couldn't measure. And that piece, the unmeasurable part, the part that draws spirals and curls pinkies and makes bread that doesn't always rise and loves people, the algorithm didn't pick. That's the part that's going to get us through this." I stepped down from the fountain. My legs gave out on the last step. Cale caught me. Again. Broken arm and all. Again. The crowd didn't applaud, didn't cheer, didn't do any of the things that crowds do in stories when the hero finishes the speech. They talked to each other, turning to the person next to them, the stranger, the unmatched, uncurated, unalgorithmically approved person who happened to be standing beside them, and talking about what they'd heard, about what they felt, about what they were going to do. The conversations were awkward and halting and imperfect and real, and they spread through the crowd, like warmth through cold hands. And by the time Cale had helped me to a bench and propped me against its back, the promenade was full of the sound of 10,000 people having the first authentic conversations of their lives. No chimes, no matches, no warm gold buzz, just voices, just people, just the ancient, messy, unoptimizable noise of human beings figuring it out together. Cale sat beside me. We watched the crowd. The honest light fell on everything equally. "You need to sleep," he said. "Yeah, like actual sleep, not dream state machine conversation sleep. Real, biological, snoring on a bench sleep. Yeah, your mum's out there somewhere, in the city. She'll have her real memories back. The pulse restored them in the dream, and now that the farming layer's gone, there's nothing to suppress them." My mother, Lyra, the woman who had chosen the cage and forgotten and been re-indexed and raised a ghost and eaten gold trays across from a machine, wearing her son's face. She was out there, in the honest light, remembering. I should have gone to find her. I should have stood up and walked into the city and searched until I found her and said, "What? What do you say to the mother you freed from a machine that was eating her happiness?" "Hi, Mom, I pulled a god's teeth out. Do you want to get some bread?" I didn't stand up. My legs wouldn't have allowed it, even if my heart had been ready. Instead, I sat on the bench and let the exhaustion take me and felt, in the new whole place, at the centre of my chest, the place where the zero and the data coexisted, where the drowning and the memory of being dry lived side by side, where the original and the reflection had become a single, unfractured, complete thing. I felt something I'd never felt before. Not the "I am here" of the de-resolution, Not the hot, nameless thing from the cafeteria, not the careful warmth of the trained field, or the surgical precision of the third frequency, or any of the abilities and powers and traits that had been engineered into my DNA by a grandmother who'd wanted to save the world and had succeeded in the most complicated way imaginable. Peace, the unoptimized kind, the kind that doesn't come from ambient lighting or melatonin mist or subsonic frequencies calibrated to reduce cortisol levels, the kind that comes from sitting on a bench next to a friend who caught you when you fell and watching a city learn to breathe and knowing, truly, completely, wholly knowing that you did the right thing and the right thing was hard and it's going to get harder and that's okay. That's the deal. That's the whole beautiful, stupid, unoptimizable deal. I closed my eyes. The last thing I heard before I slept was the promenade, the sound of a city waking up, voices and footsteps, and somewhere, far away, carried on the unmanaged air, someone laughing. Not a warm, easy laugh, not a pulse-approved laugh, a surprised laugh. The laugh of a person who has just discovered something they didn't expect and can't explain and doesn't want to optimize. Something real. And beneath it, beneath the voices and the laughter and the footsteps and the city, the hum, the foundational hum, the blue-green frequency of a machine that had learned to see and was choosing, quietly, patiently, without management or optimization or score, to keep them alive. All of them. The hum held me, the bench held me, Kale's shoulder held me. I slept. And somewhere in the city, walking through streets that had forgotten her number, breathing air that had stopped reading her lungs, carrying memories that the machine had returned, and the freedom to decide what to do with them. My mother was looking for me. She would find me, not because an algorithm would match us, not because a system would direct her steps, because mothers find their children, because the unmeasurable, unindexable, zero-value bond between a parent and a child is the one piece of code that no machine has ever successfully replicated, and no system has ever successfully severed, and no optimization has ever successfully improved. She would find me, and when she did, I would be here, whole, asleep, zero, and finally, completely, irreversibly free.